Hello, America. I'm Eric Erickson. These are the 4 things you need to know on November 25th, 2 days before Thanksgiving. President Trump is declining to meet with President Zelensky of Ukraine, instead ordering Steve Whitkoff to Moscow to meet with Putin, and Army Secretary Dan Driscoll to meet with Zelensky. Now, notably, the president has said in his statement that he doesn't want to meet with anybody until the deal is almost finalized or final, which is to say he's not going to accept the request from Zelensky to meet with him to talk about the deal. Now, notably, Marco Rubio is not involved in the process at this point. He instead, according to the president's statement, is going to be consulted along with the vice president and the chief of staff, Susie Wiles, about the progress of the meetings. Now, a lot of members of Congress are very upset about what's happening right now. Republican senators still trying to get the deal improved, and Marco Rubio, I'm told, working behind the scenes to get the deal improved. Right now, it appears to be a very pro-Russia deal, and in fact, word has come out even now as I'm recording the podcast that it appears that Steve Whitkoff, behind the scenes, actually not only plotted with the Russians on how to shape the deal, but also talked to them about how they would need to persuade Donald Trump that they were serious about the deal. This looks like a complete sellout by Whitkoff to the Russians. Up next, President Trump is considering firing FBI Director Kash Patel. Now, you should know that the original report comes from MS Now, which was MSNBC, but other outlets have now said the same thing. And in fact, the White House did not put out a firm denial, which is very notable. Normally, they do that. This comes after the FBI director has been criticized internally in the Department of Justice and the White House for compromising some investigations. In fact, according to the Department of Justice, Kash Patel tweeted something a while back during an ongoing investigation that gave notice of an investigation allowing suspects to flee. He also tweeted other things improperly, potentially compromising investigations. He has been criticized for using the FBI's private jet to go to concerts during the government shutdown. He's required to fly on the private jet and reimburse the government commercial aviation airfare, but he was told not to and still went to the concerts. And then he wanted to use the FBI to provide SWAT protection for his girlfriend, a conservative singer. When the SWAT team, according to press reports, found out the venue was secure, they left and Kash Patel berated them. He's in over his head, it appears, in using the FBI as a playground for himself. But the most damning thing is his tweets and social media presence. Remember, he was at a restaurant tweeting about the Charlie Kirk assassination while the investigation was ongoing, suggesting that there was a suspect when there was none, among other things. This is the ongoing effect of being a little bit too online by the FBI director. Indiana Republicans, under pressure from the president, have decided they're ready to engage in redistricting, and looks like they'll be headed back to the capital of Indiana here shortly after the Thanksgiving break in order to begin a redistricting process. The president had been putting inordinate pressure on members of the Indiana Senate to come back and do it. They weren't going to, but after California redistricted and then a judge froze Texas's redistricting, the Indiana Republicans feel like now they've got to come back and redistrict to try to mitigate a situation that was caused by the judge in Texas and the vote in California. We'll see if they actually go through with it. Finally, socialists are outraged that Zoran Mamdani, the new mayor of New York City, has chosen a real estate lobbyist and YIMBY group activist to help deal with the housing problems in New York City. YIMBY is yes in my backyard as opposed to no in my backyard. And the real estate lobbyist, whose name is Anne-Marie Gray, has been very active with a group called Open New York for All, which wants to lower the barriers of entry for housing in New York City. A lot of progressive activists have blasted this group for coming up with ideas that could harm the poor. Those ideas are, for example, possibly reconsidering rent control, which, as we now know in Buenos Aires and other places that have gotten rid of it, actually brought down the costs of housing and expanded the availability of housing. In New York City, the socialists really don't like that idea. Now, whether or not that happens or not, it's notable that Mamdani is trying to come across reasonable on the issue of housing and actually is embracing people who are on the left but not beholden to socialist activist ideals in order to try to expand housing options in New York City. It's a notable sign that, well, he may be slicker than a lot of people gave him credit and might not be as beholden to some of the ideas he professed as he claimed. Time will tell. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to step out for the next few days. I hope you have a fantastic Thanksgiving. I really do. I hope you remember to be thankful for your nation, for your family, and your friends. I hope you're able to enjoy some peaceful time off without the existential terrors of the news cycle. And I look forward to seeing you next week. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving. I'm Eric Erickson. These are the 4 things you need to know. God bless you all.